Oh, I need a apron. Hello, welcome to our channel. My name is Crystal. I am in my kitchen today because I'm going to be canning up some turkey stock. A few videos back, I canned up chicken stock. It is literally the same process as that, but this time we're doing turkey instead of chicken. I roasted a turkey last Sunday because we have a deep freezer in our basement, and my husband had gotten a free turkey at work last year. It was at the bottom of the freezer and we kind of forgot about it. We were cleaning out the freezer because we were going to be getting another free turkey from his work possibly, and I had gotten one from the grocery store. It was a coupon thing. It's also hunting season, so Steve's been out in the morning hunting for deer, and just in case he gets one, we want to make sure that we have room in the freezer for it. But today I'm going to be canning up turkey stock. I'm going to be using most of it to make turkey soup. I just don't know when I'm going to be doing that. I need to can it and get it out of the refrigerator. It's been in the fridge for a couple of days now, so that's what I'm doing. I posted a short this morning about how I roast our turkeys and chicken, and it's just a very basic way that I do it that keeps the most turkey flavor in my opinion, and it's easy and quick. I had received a comment that I didn't use fresh lemons. I do use fresh lemons when I have them. If I don't have them, I use bottled lemon juice and it's just fine. I take ice cold butter, get it underneath the skin, get some of that inside the cavity also, and then the remaining sprigs of thyme I put in there. It's using fresh herbs from our garden, so I use thyme. We also have lemon thyme this year, which I added, which has been a really nice addition, and parsley. I combine lemon juice, either fresh or bottled, olive oil, salt, pepper, and diced garlic, and I whisk that all together, mix it with the fresh herbs, and pour it all over the turkey, and then I roast it at 325 for 15 to 20 minutes per pound, so depending on the size of the bird that I am cooking. And I like to use our Nesco 18 quart roaster. I use that roaster for so many things here. I use it for cooking down tomatoes, especially the frozen tomatoes. It's just really good for that. Large batches of things that I'm going to be canning, like applesauce or tomato sauce, those things. It's just really handy, and it frees up the space of our double oven. We're going to be using the Presto pressure canner here, and it's very basic, very easy. The recipe that I'm using is the recipe for canning chicken stock. It is on page 105 of this Ball Blue Book Guide to Preserving. It is pretty much the same thing. I'm skipping all of the stuff where they have the ingredients, and I'm just gonna go right to the method for canning it. I'm using regular mouth quart size jars. So I have these and replacement bands somewhere that I need to wash, but I already ran those through the dishwasher. All of the things that I am mentioning or talking about, if you are interested in finding for yourself, I will have the links from our Amazon storefront down in the description, or if you ever have any questions or anything, please leave them in the comments and I will try and reply as quickly as I am able to. With that, let's get into the video. Let's get the chicken stock out. No, what are we doing? Turkey stock out of the fridge. Oh, is that heavy? It's heavy stock. Ooh. Well, I think that's some of the oil. I gotta get some of that off of there. I'm going to use a couple mesh strainers and some cheesecloth. I forgot to pick up more cheesecloth. Oh yeah? Some of this isn't necessarily fat from the turkey. It's going to be the oil from the sauce that I cooked it in. So I'm just going to be straining some of that out using a double strainer method that I use. So it's like one of these mesh strainers, and then I have cheesecloth in between and another strainer on top, and that's just to get as much of the stuff out of it that I don't want. I'm going to use a metal spoon and just scrape out as much as I am able to, and then pour it through. That looks a lot better. Now I'm gonna carefully pour this into here. So that's the layer of grease and fat that was on top from a combination of the turkey as well as the oil that we cooked it in and butter. So I'm gonna bring this up. I'm gonna leave it right around medium and let this come up to temperature a little bit. Bring this up to a boil. And while that's coming up to temperature, I'm going to get the canner ready and the lids for the jars. Here. I have a new box of regular mouth lids. I'm gonna get these washed up and get the pressure canner ready. You don't need to boil lids anymore, so I just put them in some sort of container with a little bit of dish soap and let them sit in some hot water and clean them up a little bit and then rinse them off really good. And that's all I do. Anyway, so this is a Presto pressure canner. It's as basic gets for an old school type style pressure canner. We have our pressure gauge here. This is the vent pipe. This is the pressure regulator that sits on top. And this is the lock button in the back. And then inside of it, we have this seal here. If you have one of these, you just want to make sure it's pressed in pretty good. Make sure that there's nothing blocking anything from working. So you can hold this up to the light, and if you can see light through it, then it's nice and clear. If you can't see light through it and it's blocked, you just want to clean that out so that the steam can exit the vent pipe. Make sure that your gauge is on pretty good, which it hasn't changed since we've been using it. So that's the lid. The other thing about this lid is it is not obviously the one with the toggle bolts that you do around it. It is just one that you match up the V or the arrow here to the V arrow on this side, and then you close it like that. Inside the pressure canner is the manual for the pressure canner. It has all the basics. It talks about all the different components, how they fit in, what they look like, what you need to do if you have to clean the vent pipe and things like that. I know sometimes when we get instruction books like this for different kinds of appliances, you might not keep it. This one is one that you're gonna wanna keep. It has everything that you need to know about this pressure canner and how to use it is in this book. This is a canning rack. It comes with two. If you're stacking jars, you can do 2 levels of jars. That sits on the bottom of the canner. And that's important because you don't want the jars to be sitting directly on the bottom of the pressure canner. It helps to prevent the jars from clanking around, which can cause them to break. It helps to keep your jars safe. We want safe jars. Next thing I'm going to do is add the water to the pressure canner. So using a quart size jar, I'm going to put in 3 quarts of water. So we have well water, and in order to prevent any kind of staining on the jars during the canning process, I'm going to be adding 2 tablespoons of distilled white vinegar to the water. This is pretty much all set now. That's all we have to do to it. This has been boiling for I don't know how long. We're watching a football game and I got distracted. So I'm going to turn the heat off, cover it, and I'm going to move it to a different burner and just let it simmer somewhere else. I prefer to use the pressure canner on our, I guess it would be called a power burner, I don't know, but it's going to be this front corner one. The one with the stock in it, I'm going to be moving that to a different burner and just let that simmer while I preheat this one with some canning jars in it. And we're going to put the canning jars in it to bring the jars up to temperature. I don't want to take a cold jar, which this isn't really cold, it's like room temperature, but I don't want to take a cold jar essentially and put boiling hot liquid into it. It can cause it to crack. Alright, I'm going to stick some of these jars in here. Because the jars are empty, the amount of water that's in here causes the buoyancy, so they kind of start to fall over, but it's okay. I'm gonna put the lid on, just set it like that, not tighten it down or anything. Turn the burner on down to like a 4 or so and let that come up to a simmer. Get these lids cleaned up. The lids are ready, so I'll set those off to the side. A supply check here. We have regular mouth lids that have already been rinsed. I've got the bands for them, the jar grippers, a ladle, and a funnel. Pressure canner, preheating kind of. I have the jars in there just to get them up to temperature a little bit. I have the turkey stock on a simmer, a low simmer. So we're just waiting for the jars to heat up a little bit, and then we're gonna can them up. This football game is crazy. Okay, well, we can hear it over on the couch, but yeah, this thing's boiling. I'm gonna go ahead and turn that off for now while I can up the stock, because it doesn't need to be boiling while I'm doing that. I'm probably gonna have to add a little bit more water after all this because of evaporation. Yeah, I'm gonna add a little bit of water back into the canner. We have our jars here. They're very hot from being in the canner, getting preheated. But we're gonna be filling the stock all the way up the jar, leaving 1 inch of headspace. And the headspace is the distance between the contents of the jar and the rim of the jar. So in this case, the turkey stock, we'll fill it all the way up, and then we're going to check headspace. And you can use this tool here. This is the bubble tools to get the bubbles out of thicker things that you might be canning up. And it also can check your headspace for you, and it has the different measurements listed on it. But 1 inch is the staircase all the way down to the bottom. If you measure it beforehand, you can kind of get an idea of how high up you can fill your jar. In this case, it's pretty much right where the jar starts to have a shoulder, so about right there. And I'm going to try and fill them up to that point so I don't have to ladle anything out. But the headspace is really important, because if you overfill a jar, you can get siphoning or the lids won't seal. It's a mess. So you want to make sure that you're leaving the correct headspace. It varies depending on the type of thing that you're canning. So if you're water bath canning and you're making jam, maybe the headspace is only like 1/2 to 1/4 of an inch, depending on whatever the recipe is that you're canning. If you're using a different brand of jars, the headspace might be different. Pay attention to the instruction manual, your recipe that you're following. Now we're gonna go ahead and ladle in the stock. It is boiling nicely. I'm gonna turn that down to a simmer. Actually fit a little bit more in there. Now using some distilled white vinegar and a t-shirt rag or a flour sack towel, anything that doesn't produce lint. You don't really want to use a paper towel or a microfiber cloth or even a regular dish towel, because it can leave little fibers behind. We want it nice and clean so that the lid has no excuses but to seal to the jar. We want to make it an offer it can't refuse. That's nice and clean. I'm going to take a clean lid, place it centered on the jar. Take your fingertips, grab a band or a ring, and place it on the jar finger tight. And finger tight means just the tips of your fingers and tightening the band down until resistance is met, and then tightening down a little bit further. So now we're gonna go through and do the rest of the jars, and we'll see how many we get. So far I'm really happy with the color, and having this turkey stock is gonna be good because when I'm making stuffing or anything like that, using this instead of water just adds so much flavor. I also intend on using this for making soup. I'm trying to get some jarred meals in our pantry, things that are easy to heat and eat for either for lunches or dinners that don't take up any room in our freezer. For 3 more jars in there. So I only got 7 quarts in here, and I have another quart left over. It's really important, make sure that your canner is centered on your burner. So you don't want it off to one side. It should be centered nicely over the top of your burner. And the next thing we're gonna do is lock the lid on. So we already checked it, but just double check again and make sure that all the components of it look okay and that nothing's going to stop anything from working the way that it should. And we're going to set the lid on and lock it in place like that. So at this point you don't need to put the pressure regulator on or anything. All we're going to do is bring the heat up to like a medium and let this come up to temperature. You're gonna notice steam coming out of the vent pipe. It's supposed to do that. We're gonna wait for a steady flow of steam to come out, and we're gonna let that go for 10 minutes. We're gonna turn this up to like a 5, maybe a 4, because we're gonna eat dinner. So I'm gonna turn it up to a 4. Nothing on here is gonna change yet, so the gauge shouldn't be going up or anything like that. The gauge doesn't start changing until we put the regulator on. We just had dinner, and I ended up turning it down to low so I could eat without having to get up and check it every 5 seconds. But it looks like I just turned it back up to the 4. Definitely a steady flow of steam. So the lock button has come up too back here, right here. So now we're gonna set the timer for 10 minutes. If you need to, if the steam is too much, like if it's spewing water and it's just really aggressive and kind of scary, you can turn it down a little bit. And as long as there's still a steady flow of steam, yeah, we can keep turning it down just a little bit. And it will keep steaming, but it won't be as aggressive. And we'll be back in 10 minutes. It's a little loud in here, but hopefully you can hear me. The timer is going off. So we have the pressure regulator here, and now we are going to put it on over the top of the vent pipe that has a steady flow of steam coming out. Pick the burner up to like an 8. The pounds of pressure depends on where you live. So you're going to want to look up your elevation to determine that. The recipe says 10 pounds of pressure for chicken stock or this turkey stock. Based on where we live in our elevation, I usually do 11 pounds of pressure just to be safe. So that's what I'm going to wait for. Now it's starting to go up a little bit. Right now it's at a 6 and it kind of slowed down a little bit. I'm going to turn the burner up even higher. As the gauge starts to approach the pounds that you're looking for, you want to slow the burner down a little bit just to get it to a point where it will stabilize right where you want it. All right, we're on 10 pounds of pressure. I'm going to wait for it to get up to 11. Isn't this fun? I'm having fun. We're not at 11 pounds of pressure, so I'm going to turn the burner down just a little bit, get it to stabilize right there. It doesn't need to go up much more than that. And we're going to set the timer for 25 minutes. It's 25 minutes for quart size jars and 20 minutes for pint size. The gauge can go over your necessary pounds of pressure. That's not really that big of a deal. I mean, you don't want it going dangerously high, but if it goes a little bit over, it's no big deal. What you don't want is the pressure gauge to fall below what you need, because if it falls below what you need, then you need to get it back up to where it needs to be and then restart your time. So I kind of use this like my gas pedal in the car for speed. So if I notice it's starting to go a little bit too high, I slow down by turning it down. If I start to see it falling, then I pick up speed a little bit. We just kind of got to monitor it and make sure it's staying where it needs to be. I just said a whole lot of things and the camera wasn't even recording. The timer just went off and I had already turned the burner off a little bit before that because the gauge was approaching 15 pounds of pressure and I don't need that. And I saw how much time was left, so I just ended up turning the burner off and letting it fall. Carefully move the pressure canner off of the burner that it's on just to help it cool down. So some time has passed here. I was distracted writing out Christmas lists with the kids, but we're gonna move this forward. The pressure gauge has fallen down to 0. The lock button has completely fallen. We should be able to safely remove the pressure regulator. I'm gonna take the lid off, but I'm gonna use oven mitts. Twist the lid. And when we lift up, we're going to lift up so that the steam is directed away from our face because it's very hot and you can get really hurt by getting steam blasted from that. We're going to let them sit here for like 5 or 10 minutes and just let them slowly start to cool down before we move them to the towel on the countertop. Right, these have been sitting here for a few minutes, actually probably closer to about 10 minutes now. We have a folded old bath towel on our countertop. This is not only here to protect our very old countertop, it's to help prevent the hot jars from coming in direct contact with the cool countertop, which can cause them to break. That's what it looks like. It's such a perfect color. The next step for these is they are going to sit on the counter overnight into tomorrow. I'm going to take the bands off, check the seals by just lifting them up and down, making sure that the button is pressed down, and then I will label them and stick them in our pantry. But that's how those turned out and they look pretty good. I'm not really sure how long these are actually going to be in the pantry for because I do intend on making a turkey soup with them. But I have these other ones here that I'm not going to process just one jar in the canner, so I'm going to just stick these in the fridge. That is how they look, and like I said, I plan on making turkey soup with most of these, and anything else I'll just leave it in the pantry. It's a great substitute flavor enhancer instead of adding water, like if you're making rice, stuffing, anything that usually you would add water to, switching it up and adding turkey or chicken stock or beef stock. It's been a long day, so that'll do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. and we will see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!